Welcome back, everybody, to the Peer-to-Peer Policy Pod. This week, we are covering the Illinois governor, I think repeating some past mistakes from campaigns that we've seen recently, Wyoming's new stablecoin that they've just announced, Bo Hines leaving the White House, landing a new job, some coverage predicting trillions of dollars in savings from AI. Much more. Remember to follow me on X at MorgansternNJ. Like, subscribe, follow the pod wherever you get your pods. Apple Podcasts, Rumble, YouTube, Spotify. Okay, Zach, let's jump right in.
All right. Well, let's start in the state of Illinois, the once great state of Illinois. So fresh off of providing sanctuary to Texas Democrat lawmakers who fled the state in a political stunt to delay a special session here in Texas, Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker signed a pair of crypto bills, which, according to one article, provide consumer protections, require exchange oversight, and cap ATM fees at 18%. In a tweet, Governor Pritzker said, while Trump lets crypto bros write federal policy, Illinois is implementing common sense protections for investors and consumers. Thank goodness for that. Brian, so there's sort of two parts to this analysis. You have the policy and the political. Let's start with the policy, the substance. What are these bills designed to do?
So there's the Digital Assets and Consumer Protection Act that requires crypto companies and exchanges to maintain adequate financial resources. I think of this as a proof of reserves requirement, not necessarily that controversial. Implementing cybersecurity and anti-fraud measures, provide investment disclosures, and follow customer service standards similar to traditional financial businesses. All of this is very sterile language. I have not yet seen a very robust debate on the merits here. The proof of reserves piece, I think, would probably be the most accepted by the digital asset industry, since there have been other measures that the industry actually champions. Stablecoin companies, for example, generally like to brag that they have dollars or treasuries or dollar-related assets that prove that they're not a fractional reserve banking entity, just like the traditional finance system where you deposit $100 and they lend out $900 or whatever it may be, basically creating money. So the digital asset space generally likes proof of reserves. It helps differentiate them from the TradFi system. So then putting standards that are consistent with the TradFi system seems out of touch, I would say. It's a signal to me. Again, I haven't seen a super robust debate on what it's going to do to the digital asset market in Illinois. I can't imagine it's going to be super helpful, though, being more restrictive than other states, being less friendly to innovation. But that's prong one. So there's the second bill, the Digital Asset Kiosk Act. Now, crypto ATMs or Bitcoin ATMs have been a punching bag for a while. This has been sort of a touchy subject in a lot of jurisdictions. This bill targets cryptocurrency kiosks or ATMs by requiring operators to register with the state regulators, provide full refunds to scam victims, cap transaction fees at 18%, and limit daily transactions to $2,500 to new customers. This is designed to prevent the sorts of like catfishing where people will pose as a government entity saying, oh, you owe back taxes or you owe this like traffic fine, or posing as a family member and saying, oh, I need money, and convincing somebody to go to a Bitcoin ATM or crypto ATM and exchange dollars and limit the paper trail and then hand over all your life savings to some bad actor that's trying to trick you. Targeting the Bitcoin ATMs to me feels like banning cars because you've had a number of accidents in your state, or banning cars because certain people drunk drive or what have you. I mean, these scammers, like the Nigerian prince is a cliche for a reason. Like scammers are always going to scam. Banning the means of scamming just means they're going to find a different means of scamming. These types of scams have been going on for a long time. So, limiting the financial freedom of individuals in the name of the nanny state, I don't love. I mean, I don't want scams either. So I guess just playing whack-a-mole and trying to limit the tools. I mean, I at least understand where they're coming from. I don't think it's the best way to handle it from a public policy perspective. This quote here also from the governor. So I want to shift from the policy piece, which again, being more restrictive than other states is probably not going to lead to more business growth and certainly not more freedom for your citizens. So probably not the best way. Consumer protection, good. How you do it, the devil's always in the details on the policy piece. The way he's marketing, the governor of Illinois, J.B. Pritzker, is marketing this is asinine. It is unbelievably silly and stupid because we have seen this movie before. So I think I'm stepping on your bridge to the next topic. So if you want to introduce it, but the politics of it to me are actually more interesting than the policy side.
Absolutely. No, let's dive. That's exactly where we were going next. So let's hit on the politics of it. Is you gave, I think, a fair characterization of the substance of the policy. And actually the way that you described it, it reminds me of our episode last week where we talked about that great speech by Commissioner Peirce about peanut butter and watermelon. Her closing sentiment was essentially that taking on these nanny state policies under the guise of privacy, security, whatever it is, really does limit freedom. So I think there's a lot of great parallels from that. So fair characterization of the policy side of things. But I think as you alluded to, there is a political reality to it. And I sort of that, given the governor's engagement with providing sanctuary to the Texas lawmakers. But what is your take on the policy of it? I mean, it's pretty clear in his tweets invoking the president's name, invoking crypto bros, that he's already cast his political judgment. But what's your take on the politics of these bills?
Yeah, so his tweet has gotten a lot of backlash, and I think for good reason. So the way he's selling these policies, which we just went through, they can be a little dry. But he says, while Trump lets crypto bros write federal policy, Illinois is implementing common sense protections for investors and consumers. So crypto bros obviously is a charged term. He knows what he's doing. He's trying to paint, Trump supporters with a broad brush that, bad, basically. Crypto bros, bad. Well, Stand With Crypto, one of the big advocacy groups, points out 66,000 grassroots crypto advocates in Illinois alone, 2.3 million Stand With Crypto advocates nationally, insulting the millions of crypto voters on both sides of the political aisle who want to make the U.S. the crypto capital of the world is a bold strategy for somebody who wants to run for president. Truly. I mean, look, we've talked about it on this podcast in the past. There are millions of enthusiastic holders of Bitcoin, people who are interested in other digital assets because they're dissatisfied with the legacy financial system. President Trump tapped into that voting bloc. Even CNN admits that he drew so many people who didn't typically vote, certainly who didn't typically vote Republican, to his side by talking about financial freedom, by talking about what Bitcoin offers and what digital assets can offer that the traditional finance system doesn't. It has been said by CNN and others. CNN most importantly, perhaps because they're so dead set against Trump, they even admitted the crypto vote probably swung the election to Trump because there are enthusiastic supporters of Bitcoin and digital assets. No one is going to vote for you because you say, I hate Bitcoin and I hate crypto. That voting block doesn't exist. You know how we know? Because Elizabeth Warren declared a war on crypto and it mobilized pro-crypto voters against the Democrats. We just saw it. The data bears it out in the 2024 election. We now have the most pro-crypto Congress in history because, in part, the backlash to Elizabeth Warren's war on crypto and the mobilization of these voters in favor of President Trump, who promised to make America the crypto capital of the world. So we just saw an election swung on the basis of what Bitcoin and crypto are offering people, new alternatives, new financial freedom. Here we have the big dumb governor of Illinois saying, I'm going to double down on the thing that just lost my party an election. That's a bold strategy, Cotton. Let's see how it works out. Not a very wise choice. So regardless of whatever the policies are in these laws, again, misguided, the politics of it are even dumber by the governor here. Poor choice, poor choice. Hopefully he sees the light. If he has any chance of winning another election someday, he's going to have to.
And very out of touch, tremendous points, and very out of touch, I think, even with the politics of the policy in his own party. There's some commentary out there right now that says, with the exception of maybe 2 or 3 members in the House, the Democrat Party doesn't really have a good message on crypto. But the votes
they're
bear
all
it out.
coming around. They're all
Yes.
coming around. The Genius Act passed with over 100 Democrat votes in the House. The Clarity Act passed with, was it 78 Democrat votes in the House?
Sounds right.
It was
Yeah.
like 300 votes in favor of it. This is a bipartisan consensus at this point, and he's pounding his chest saying, I live under a rock, apparently. So nicely done. Keep it up, Governor.
Yep.
You're going places. Maybe to jail, if any history of Illinois governors. I think there's like 8 Illinois governors in jail or something. So yeah, nice work, dummy. Bad choice.
We'll see how it bears out. And unfortunately, growing up in the state next door to Illinois, it's a much bigger state than the city of Chicago, and there's a lot of good people there who are unfortunately bearing the weight of bad politics and bad policy. But in elections, you get what you deserve, and so you elect these type of leadership. These are the type of policies that you get. Transitioning over to our next topic. So last week, I think we called it it's like we were doing live coverage of a high-speed car chase in LA County. So we had breaking news. The Treasury Secretary, Scott Bessent, was maybe pouring a little bit of cold water on the strategic Bitcoin reserve. He said in an interview that the U.S. would not sell Bitcoin, but it would not buy new Bitcoin and would instead rely on forfeited reserves to fund the strategic Bitcoin reserve. So Brian, again, we came on air very shortly after that interview last week. Things were developing very quickly by the time our podcast ultimately aired. But what is the latest on the strategic Bitcoin reserve and the kind of, let's say, fallout from that interview?
Yeah, it was quick and strong pushback. A lot of Bitcoiners were saying we've been scammed. They lied to us. There was very strong pushback after the secretary's comment. And so they put out a clarifying tweet. In fairness, I think we said this at the time, it was just a piece of a broader answer. It could have been a throwaway comment. It sounds like that's what it was, because they put out a clarifying tweet saying Treasury is committed to exploring budget neutral pathways to acquire more Bitcoin, to expand the reserve, and to execute on the president's promise to make the United States the Bitcoin superpower of the world. So that's a pretty strong walk back, I think. So I think it's fair to say it was kind of just a muddled comment in the middle of a longer answer. Willing to take the secretary at face value on that. The price of Bitcoin has dropped. I think there's a lot of reasons for that. I don't know that the secretary's comment is driving that, especially because he clarified it later that day. I think what it may have revealed is something a little deeper, that they haven't really decided what those budget neutral ways of acquiring Bitcoin will be. There's a number of ways you can do it. I've seen some ideas online. We have a digital asset stockpile of other seized digital assets. You could stake those and generate revenue and then buy Bitcoin with the revenue. You could mine Bitcoin on federal sites. We have a lot of powered land with energy that is maybe underutilized. The government could mine Bitcoin. And of course, we have Senator Lummis's Bitcoin Act, which is also sponsored by Congressman Begich in the House. That would revalue our gold reserves. They haven't been revalued since the 70s, I think. So it's valued at $40 an ounce, $42 an ounce. Gold is at $3,000 an ounce or something like that. So the problem with that is, in essence, kind of printing $1 trillion if you're revaluing the gold. And then if you're using that sort of found money, I guess, in quotes, to then buy Bitcoin. That's Senator Lummis's idea. I think if you're going to have reserves, they probably should be valued properly, and they should be brought into the 21st century. To quote Scott Bessent, the Secretary of the Treasury, although he doesn't seem interested in revaluing the gold, this is Senator Lummis's legislation. This is what she says is a budget neutral approach. She wants to do that. I have heard others seizing on that idea where if you're revaluing the gold, other people are going to want to get their piece of the pie. So they're going to want to use some of it to fund a sovereign wealth fund, or they're going to use some of it to, buy back treasury securities. They're going to do whatever it is they're going to do. So a bit of it's not clear cut. I think it's a fine idea. I think other people are worried about it. So I'm not so sure that the administration is eager to do that. But again, I'm glad that the secretary clarified his comment that they are looking for budget neutral ways to acquire more Bitcoin. We don't really know what that looks like yet. We know there's a bunch of ideas floating around in the ether, but we don't know what they're going to ultimately do. He's also, I think it's important for context to note that Secretary Bessent is currently negotiating dozens of trade deals. He is also the acting commissioner of the IRS while they're implementing the One Big Beautiful Bill and all the tax provisions that just passed through Congress. He oversees all of our sanctions policy and the implications for Russia and Ukraine. He's involved in those negotiations. Safe to say he has a lot on his plate. So, a little disappointed they haven't ironed out the wrinkles of how they're going to stack sats in the SBR. I can't say I'm surprised, though. Like, it's somewhat understandable. So we'll give them some space to figure it out. But I'm glad he clarified that they are going to acquire more Bitcoin. They're going to figure it out. I do think we're in a space race. Look, the president fired the starter's pistol by establishing a strategic Bitcoin reserve. That means you got to start acquiring faster because our adversaries certainly are going to. So I think the urgency needs to be ratcheted up a little bit. But that's where we're at on that issue.
Well, we'll continue to cover that here as things change. And you're right. There are a few officials in the administration who wear like all the hats, and he and Secretary Rubio are among those. They're juggling multiple roles and a lot of policy. So a little bit of grace to the human beings that are doing a lot of work, but we also do want to see the policy move forward. So we'll continue to cover it here on the podcast. One thing that is all the rage right now, stablecoins. They're all the rage. And we've talked about how President Trump signed the Genius Act to establish a nationwide stablecoin framework. But now the state of Wyoming has become the first public entity to issue a stablecoin known as the Frontier Stable Token. Brian, what can you tell us about this, and why is it significant that a state like Wyoming, a public entity, is now issuing a stablecoin?
It's a little odd to me, to be honest, to see a state issuing a stablecoin. I mean, we've had private money for a long time in this country. It's almost reverting back to, well, it's different. But, when America was founded, there were like 13 different colonial currencies. That, of course, turned out to be a disaster. This is different from that because it's a dollar-pegged stablecoin. I've seen other ideas for issuing like gold-backed or silver-backed stablecoins. I find those interesting as well because it's sounder money that can't be printed into oblivion. But anyway, I digress. So Wyoming has launched its own stablecoin, FRNT, as you said, the Frontier Stable Token. It's going to function on 7 blockchains supported by Visa. So you're supposed to be able to use it wherever Visa is accepted, pretty much everywhere around the world. It is not yet available to the public, but it is apparently live on 7 chains: Ethereum, Solana, Arbitrum, Avalanche, Polygon, Optimism, and Base. I'm familiar with some of those, but not all of those. I guess maybe I'm too Bitcoin focused. I don't think it's possible to be too Bitcoin focused, but available on all these different blockchains. So to refresh the listener on what is a stablecoin, it's a digital token that represents the value of a dollar. So FRNT, backed by US dollars and short-term treasuries. The legislation mandates over collateralization. So we talked about proof of reserves earlier. This requires proof of reserves, 102% reserves. So again, different from the fractional reserve banking system that we are all familiar with, where if there's a run on the bank, there's not going to be enough dollars in that bank to satisfy everyone's account. this changes that, at least in the case of this token, they have to have the reserves there in case there's a run on the bank, so to speak. Wyoming has been competitive in trying to show that they're a leading digital asset state. I think this is, they want this to be a symbol of that, of course. I would say it's interesting. I don't know. I'm going to reserve judgment. I haven't seen a lot of commentary yet on kind of what this means. Sovereigns issuing digital tokens isn't my favorite thing, if I'm being honest, because we don't want to get anywhere near a central bank digital currency where anything administered or closely overseen, even with private partners, by the government is going to be a gateway, I think. Maybe I'm being chicken little here, being too scared, but I don't want to see any kind of gateway to more government surveillance and control over people's transactions. So I kind of prefer the model of the private stable coins like Tether and Circle, where you can, and with Circle, you can use your Coinbase account. There's stable coins on Binance that are usable globally. I kind of like having a little bit more separation from the government. But that said, Wyoming wants to demonstrate their leadership. So we'll see how this shakes out. If it eventually becomes available to consumers, how many people use it? I don't know. Is it going to be better or worse than some of the stable coins currently functioning today? Remains to be seen. I think we'll have to just keep up with it, keep following it, see how it shakes out.
Yep, we'll continue to follow it here. We do, I like the idea to a degree of federalism and states being innovative in the digital asset space, and at the same time, I think those points that you make about the concern of a sovereign, issuing coins, the possibility of central bank digital currencies, all those things I think are a reality. There's a big conference happening in Wyoming. The governor, as you said, in his press release touted how many, I think it was maybe 75 or 76 bills that the state of Wyoming has enacted in the digital asset space. They do want to be a leader in this, and they have been, and they are. We'll see. We'll see just as the technology develops, if this becomes publicly available, as you said, how many people decide to use it and the like. So we will continue to cover that story here on the podcast. Moving on to our next segment. So last week we covered the announcement that Bo Hines was leaving his role in the White House, and boy, did things move quickly. Earlier this week, it was announced that he will be joining Tether. So Brian, do you have any thoughts on this news?
Yeah, so Tether is the world's biggest stable coin, the most profitable company per employee, I think, in history. And they built it overseas because we didn't have clear rules yet. Now with the Genius Act, we're getting clear rules. So Tether wants to enter the US market and be a key player here. They have built their business on retail account holders around the world, people who maybe don't have ready access to financial services, to bank accounts and the like. There are a lot of countries around the world. Americans are coddled. We have a very nice life, and we don't understand that hyperinflation and the debasement of currency around the world has been a problem for generations. And so people want dollars because the ice cube melts slower than it does in other countries. And so that's why Tether has really taken off and have built hundreds of millions of users around the world who can effectively use Tether like their bank account and trade in dollar stable coins. So a big player in the space. They want to establish a really strong presence in the United States. The CEO, Paolo, he had kind of famously said he was never going to set foot in America because of the war on crypto that was happening under the Biden administration. I've now seen him at DC conferences and things a number of times. He's here on a regular basis. So they really do want to build their US business. And so interesting hire. Bo Hines, very well respected amongst administration personnel across agencies, even amidst all the turf wars that happen when you're running an interagency process. Well respected among industry players, even though there's a lot of market-based competition between them. So he developed a very strong reputation in his just 7 months in the White House. Accomplished a great deal. The president's executive orders ending Operation Choke Point, helping to usher the Genius Act through, establishing the Bitcoin Strategic Reserve, all of these things. I think it's worth noting that Tether, just one way I think about their business model is that they're a huge purchaser of US debt. And so they collect interest on that debt to back their stable coins. And I believe they're then reinvesting the interest into Bitcoin. And they have one of the biggest Bitcoin stacks in the world as well. So I think a forward leaning, really smart company and a very smart hire for Bo. He may take on other projects. I would predict that he will, because I think he's in high demand. So he's a strategic advisor for Tether. Maybe he'll do some other stuff too. And he'll remain a special government employee. So sort of an informal part-time advisor to the White House, since he's acquired so much institutional knowledge over the course of all the activity that he's been there for over the last 7 months. I think it's interesting that there was a Fortune magazine article with Bo where he said he had gotten 50 job offers pretty much immediately. Interesting flex. Okay. I don't know how all those offerers feel being in a crowd like that, but okay. But Tether's huge. They had some difficulties in the past with news coverage focusing on bad guys using Tether to move money around. Seems like they've addressed that quite fulsomely, and they've really built a pretty strong reputation. Strong firm, strong candidate. Excited to see what happens next.
Yes, absolutely. Well, congratulations. It's always nice when we have a story that's a little bittersweet and that can end, hopefully well, and not only for him and Tether, but for everyone. The rising tide lift all boats. We'll hope that is the case. Well, speaking of something that is not just rising the tides, it's making tsunamis appear onto the scene, let's say, is AI. Terrible metaphor. But another topic we do talk about on the podcast a lot is AI. And there was a recent report from Morgan Stanley that estimates that AI adoption could save corporate America nearly $1 trillion annually. Trillion with
Annually.
a T. Annually. And some of the analysis of the report says that savings could come from AI increasing efficiency and then the adoption of agentic AI, which according to the report could lead to workforce reductions. And there's some nuance to that. So Brian, what is your take on this report?
Yeah, so I said in the past, I'm more on the side of the optimists, the techno optimists, than I am the doomers. Technology over the course of history, we've seen from the Industrial Revolution through the World Wars, through the growth of the internet and tech businesses, the more innovative companies do create a lot of growth and a lot of jobs. And I don't think it's a bad thing if human beings are going to spend less time on tasks that could be done by a machine, and then they can be redirected. Their energy, their creativity, their thought, their talents can be redirected to other more productive things. Like more GDP per capita is a good thing. We haven't been back to 3, 4, 5% GDP growth since like Reagan was president in the 80s. I mean, like we need a resurgence of human productivity. And I think AI is going to take a lot of tasks off of people's plates so that it can focus on more productive tasks. I think that's a good thing. Another thing that I think people aren't focusing on enough is who's going to build the businesses of the future. We're going to need a lot more electrical infrastructure. We're going to need a lot more data centers. We need more builders. We need welders. We need electricians. We need HVAC technicians. Like there are other things that we still need a ton of humans to do. We need a ton of tradesmen. And then building a more productive society, more GDP per capita is a good thing. So from a market perspective, saving $1 trillion. I mean, I think our economy, was it $20 or $30 trillion economy? Saving $1 trillion and putting it back into shareholders' pockets is going to lead to market growth, 401k growth. That's a good thing. And that money can be reinvested in other projects that are going to be more productive. So other jobs, different jobs that are more future oriented. So overall, I see this as an eye-popping number, whether it's true or not. Maybe. I mean, maybe it might be. I've seen estimates of increasing worker productivity by 40%, which is even bigger than kind of the internet revolution. Maybe. I don't find it outlandish. But overall, look, saving $1 trillion so that can be either delivered to shareholders or deployed in different investments and hiring people for different, more productive purposes. That's great. Like, I see this as hugely optimistic. I think the doomers are going to say, that's just going to, buy back shares and they're going to lay off employees. So working people suffer, rich people get richer. That's the doomer perspective. I actually don't buy into that at all. I think we're talking about a more productive economy per capita, which is going to lead to a better quality of life for everyone. So I see this very positive.
Yeah, this is the great story, and the sort of the other piece too, that nuance I alluded to, is being realistic about the timeline over which this stuff happens. Because you read these stories and like AI is decimating this industry or that industry. This is one of these things that this is something, these changes will, while they seem like they're happening fast, will happen over time. They'll impact different industries in different ways. And so it's not like 1 million Americans are going to lose their jobs tomorrow and get replaced by the robots. So this is, I think this is good cause for optimism. A very interesting study and report by Morgan Stanley, and AI will be a topic not only that our company Riot will be diving into, but that we'll continue to cover on this podcast and try to share some of those interesting, optimistic, good stories. For our final substantive segment, I wanted to give a plug to a new congressional fellowship program that is being offered by our friends at the Bitcoin Policy Institute. This is a really cool opportunity designed to place Bitcoin industry experts in congressional or committee offices for 12 months full time. And this fellowship structure, this is not new. They have doctors and physicists and all kinds of stuff do these type of fellowships in Congress. The military, they do these kind of things all the time. But this is really cool that BPI is doing this. The goal being educating lawmakers, staff, and other key stakeholders on the importance of Bitcoin, how the technology works, and then ultimately crafting the research and the policy that Congress considers. And I think it's good too, because it gives folks that work in the Bitcoin space a chance to expand their understanding of the legal and the policy landscape in which their business and their industry operates. We're former Hill staffers. I think this is really cool, and I hope that people watching will take advantage. And you can learn more. You can Google it, or you can just apply at www.btcfellowship.org. Very cool, Brian.
Yeah, you're right. You and I both worked on the Hill. It is a great learning experience to figure out how the sausage is made. And there is still an education gap. There's still a gap in information between what Bitcoin is, how it works, and how policymakers think about it. So this is a way to close that gap and to get better laws on the books, to get more human freedom, more flourishing. We need more Bitcoiners in the halls of power so that we don't have any more war on Bitcoin or war on crypto. We're going to prevent that. We're going to help America be the crypto capital, the Bitcoin superpower, because we want a better, stronger, more freedom-oriented financial system for the future. There's a way to do that. If you are in Bitcoin and you want to learn how the sausage gets made and you want to have an impact and you want to get better public policy, which we all do, think about it. Apply. Take a year and go do this and learn. And I think you'll enjoy it. It's a great place, especially for young people, to cut their teeth earlier in their career. So, yeah, I hope you all will apply. And you can always talk to us about what it's like to work on the Hill. But go for it. Jump in. The water's warm.
Yes, it is. And thanks to our friends at BPI for doing that. And you'll learn a lot from engaging with Bitcoin Policy Institute as well. They're a great organization. They have a lot of events. You will learn a lot. All right. For our final segment, we'll end in the traditional way with the grab bag segment. And this will air on Friday. So I'll say tomorrow, Saturday, marks the start of week 0 of the college football season. And the first game of the season is a ranked matchup between number 17, Kansas State, and number 22, Iowa State, in the most famous place in college football, Dublin, Ireland. I got to be honest, I did not realize that this was the fourth consecutive year that college football kicked its season off in Ireland. And I remember, though, the first game last year, I didn't know this happened in Ireland, but Florida State was ranked number 10. A lot of excitement going into the season. They were upset by Georgia Tech, and then en route to Florida State's ACC worst 2-10 regular season. So the luck or the curse of the Irish may be upon Kansas State or Iowa State this season. And as a native Iowan, though I'm a Hawkeye fan, I do hope that Kansas State season will be the unlucky one, and that Iowa State will have not only a good game, but a good season ahead.
I too am thrilled that football is back. My wife will insist that I say, "Go Dogs." I will see how Georgia fares this season. She's a big Georgia alum. I went to Georgetown. We don't really have a football program that we can cheer for, unfortunately. So I'm a Dogs fan by marriage. Somebody posted on Twitter a video of them in like a parking deck somewhere in Athens, Georgia, and from very far away, they could hear Coach Kirby Smart screaming the top of his lungs at the players, just absolutely letting them have it. So football is in the air. It can't come soon enough. Very exciting. My grab bag segment is what is going on at Cracker Barrel? My X feed is all Cracker Barrel all the time. You have to show just a search for Cracker Barrel and like the tweets. Donald Trump Jr. has weighed in saying, what's going on at Cracker Barrel. Alex Bruzewitz from the Trump campaign is savaging them, just absolutely destroying them. Mary Catherine Ham talked about what she wants in her Cracker Barrel. Everybody's weighing in, not in a positive way, because they're rebranding. They took the old man leaning on the barrel, Uncle Herschel, and they took the cracker and the barrel, as many people are saying, out of the logo. Larry the Cable Guy, I think, sums it up when he said, "Please, we beg of you, don't change the iconic Cracker Barrel design. For the love of Uncle Herschel's favorite breakfast, don't do this. You're killing me. You're killing us." I think what I'm gleaning from this, so Cracker Barrel has not had the same traffic that they have had in the past. Their stock price has been suffering. Their sales has been suffering. So they're trying to do something to fix the business. I get that. But they serve a core demographic, and it's people who appreciate Americana, a simpler time in our country. It is the country store. It's literally what it's called. What they've chosen to do, and their new CEO, she came in 2023, what she's chosen to do is rebrand by taking out the old man and the barrel from their logo and making it very sterile. And then they're redesigning all their restaurants to have this like brighter, more modern feel to it. It's kind of soulless, though. They're like, we're trying to broaden the aperture and, attract new clientele. This ain't that. What you need to do with a brand like Cracker Barrel is to double down on nostalgia, because Cracker Barrel at its essence is nostalgic. So you need to be pro-family, pro-gun, pro-country, pro-farmer, pro-nostalgia, pro a simpler time in America. And, I don't like it to be political. It's sort of political. Like, it's MAGA country. It's flyover country goes to Cracker Barrel. Like, young urban elites aren't going to Cracker Barrel. There aren't even Cracker Barrels in those markets for a reason. So you need to be doubling down on pro-America, pro-family, pro-faith, pro-working with your hand, working man. Like, double down on that. Instead, they've gone the big corporate marketing agency route of like they're sponsoring pride parades, and they're trying to market to young urban elites and stuff. Like, that's not your market. Don't be Bud Light. Don't be Target. Don't be Jaguar. Don't look at these other brands that are failing because they are alienating their core users. You got to just meet your people where they are. And so that's what I think the big disconnect is for Cracker Barrel. I just didn't expect this to be such a hot topic in 2025. But here we are, and this is all over my Twitter feed.
It's perfect timing too for me, as we said before. So I must accidentally be a coastal elite trapped in a Midwesterner's body, because I had never eaten at Cracker Barrel before until we were on vacation, and we're passing through, and we stopped and stayed in Pascagoula, Mississippi. Google that and see where that is, folks. We stopped at Pascagoula, Mississippi, and we ate at a Cracker Barrel, and I walked in, and it was like nothing I had ever seen before. And at the same time, it was everything that I knew. And all of those things that you just expressed, I felt inside of there. It has like a very it just has that feel of like, I know these are my people, and and I'm not even from Pascagoula, Mississippi. I'm from the Midwest. But there is just that sense that you have in that restaurant. And it's that kind of stereotype of like, somebody on, Fifth Avenue or Madison Avenue, who has never left, the confines of Manhattan, trying to figure out what it is that people in Pascagoula, Mississippi, and Bismarck, North Dakota, and Topeka, Kansas, and Sioux City, Iowa want, need, and feel, in their everyday life. So it's perfect timing that this is blowing up the way that it is. Again, like, these companies, they're going to, they make the decisions that they make. But just as somebody who had never ever been to a Cracker Barrel until like literally 2 weeks ago, I would not want that to change. I would want to walk back into Cracker Barrel and have it not feel like I'm walking into, I don't know, some sweet green salad store, but that it's that whole experience. You walk through the shop, and there's the trinkets and the food and the people. Yeah, it's great. So I'm glad that you picked this for your topic, and I hijacked it.
No, I'm glad you did. And it's interesting to me that we keep having to have this conversation, that like most people actually love their family, their faith, their country, and they want to celebrate it, and they want to be in a warm and welcoming environment. They don't want to be in a sterile corporate environment. Like, that's most people, and it's not weird. And yet I think people who work on Madison Avenue these days view people who are like that like they're zoo animals, that they have to go and, remember the New York Times coverage after 2016 where they'd be like, well, I went to those states to figure out, what are these weird people like, like they're the normal ones, actually. So I don't know. We're still running this experiment, but we'll keep running it, and the market is going to speak, right? The stock has not done, it hasn't been doing well in recent years. So they're trying to do something different. I have sympathy for that, but they're not doing it the right way. So we've given our input. Maybe they'll listen to us. I hope so. We'll see. But that is all for us for this week's episode. Thanks, everybody, for joining. Hopefully you learned something. Send us feedback, your questions, your comments. Remember to follow me on X at MorganSternNJ. Like, subscribe, follow us wherever you get your pods, on Rumble, YouTube, Apple, Spotify. And we will see you next time for another episode of the Peer-to-Peer Policy Pod. Thanks, everybody.